What's good? It's Fever. Today we're going to go over in a little bit more detail how to actually play the Tamer in PvE in Black Desert. The idea of the Tamer is this agile melee warrior supported in combat by their beast pet, who luckily you don't need to manage. You move fast, you strike fast, but you also go down fast. And for 90% of the combat, you can almost shelf that identity because the way the Tamer plays against most enemies is to just get up on top of them, knock them down, and just wail on them. It's almost how you survive by keeping everything around you CC'd. Your main damage and a basic hierarchy of ability usage should look like Bolt Wave, Jolt Wave, Trample, and Whiplash. These are your core abilities. Bolt and Jolt are cast after one another with shift left click. They have high crit rate, high damage, they stun, that's important, they have fast animations, and they're your main form of damage. Trample, used with the spacebar, is a forward lunge that debuffs accuracy, but more importantly knocks things down. And then you have Whiplash, a stationary channeled beatdown that deals additional damage to things on the ground by just holding down the right click. So the idea is to get out as many Bolt and Jolts as possible, follow it up with the Trample, and if everything around you is knocked down, then Whiplash. A lot of the time it isn't safe to Whiplash. This is because the small AoE of crowd control from Bolt, Jolt, and Trample might not hit everything, and if anything is able to hit you and does hit you, you usually end up dying. So if you can't Whiplash, you just go back into getting more Bolt and Jolts out. Because of the skill flow scatter stance, Bolt and Jolt Wave can be cast after any other ability in an animation cancel type way, so if you have to reposition yourself with a side hop or a back hop, you can go right back into it with a Bolt Jolt, and if you trample to set up a Whiplash but you aren't safe enough to cast it, right back into Bolt Jolt. And I should also mention it's popular to use the legendary beast power, the forward dash, which is SHIFT+SPACE, between two sets of Bolts and Jolts, because its animation is cancelled so fast that it's like 4 quick hits in succession, and it's a 3-second cooldown on legendary beast power, so you can do this all the time, and that really ups your damage. So that's how you deal damage, but you also have 2 abilities that you can use to support that. The first is Q, which is your Void Lightning. This plants you stationary, it deals a little bit of damage, it gives you an absorption shield, and it slightly pulls enemies towards you and teleports your pet wherever he is on top of you to initiate a stun. So defensively, this is a win-win. It's a shield and a stun, but because your pet can aggro enemies on his own, teleporting him to you will bring those mobs to you, and the slight pull effect helps you group enemies up tighter, which is insanely important since you need tight groups because your small AoE CCs, you need them to land on everything. To help with grouping even more, you can use the ability Flash. This is holding back and left clicking, which also has that same type of grouping, suctioning mechanic attached to it. So basically, you aggro a group of enemies, you help tighten the group with Void Lightning and Flash, and then you throw out as many Bolt and Jolt waves as you can, and then look for opportunities to hit them with the Whiplash. And I think it's important to keep it that simple, because I could give you a longer, more intricate combo. Because of the context of every fight, you're going to be using your movement and repositioning just to make sure that people are getting hit with your melee CC abilities, but also, because you're so fragile, if you see a ranged attacker or a caster, you need to move to them, bring the fight to them, because you don't have ranged abilities, and 1 or 2 shots, even against equal level mobs, will kill you. So you're going to be constantly reevaluating what's going on and bringing the fight or moving where you're dealing damage on top of ranged casters or ranged attackers. I should also mention the Heilang skill Roaring. This ability is great when it can kill stuff on its own, and it's terrible when it can't. It knocks enemies away, you're stationary with no CC or defense during it, 2 things that you really don't want, but the damage multiplier is so high that for a lot of enemies, your gear can reach a threshold where it's the only ability you need to cast. I don't like skilling it very high until you flesh out the more core skills, but you'd be surprised at how strong it is even with just a couple of levels in it. Now, large and boss monsters that can't be CC'd, we have to fight differently. We have to rely on our invulnerability frames from dodge hops, from side attacks, and from the legendary beast power ability. And the idea here is really just to hit and run, right? We're gonna Bolt, Jolt, Wave, dodge, Bolt, Jolt, Wave, dodge. And as we get more familiar with the patterns and how much time we have before we need to move and dodge, we can chain more Bolt, Jolt, Waves together by sandwiching beast power or trample between them. But but against these non-CCable enemies, we use our mobility to constantly stay at the back of the enemy and to just avoid getting hit because we can be 1 or 2 shot. The bane of Tamers are the mixes of enemies that are un-CCable in groups of normal CCable mobs, because they're all equally deadly. We can't get hit by any of them, and in the process of trying to CC the normal mobs, you can easily get got by the big guys because everything we do is right up in the enemy's face, and in most cases, I won't even fuck with this stuff, especially if I can't kill the normal mobs quickly. Now, this was brief. I want to do these guide videos in smaller chunks, but I will be touching on gearing and skilling and PvP and tips and animation canceling in later videos, but this should give you an idea of how it should look to play a Tamer. If you notice you're getting hit too hard, if you're dying more on your Tamer than other characters, that's just the Tamer. You're paper thin. Defensively, you just can't get hit, and offensively, as long as you're giving out as many BJs as possible, you're golden. Well, that's it for now. Until next time, this is Fever. Proof.